Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show, coming at you live from Majority Towers in sunny Glasgow. I'm the host, Mark Devlin, and excuse me being a bit out of breath. There's been a big rush to get this on the show done on time today with all the big events of the day. This is Scotland's #1 politics chat, and we are so glad to have you with us tonight. I'm here with co-hosts David Griffiths and Mark Zegfeld, who is going to be actually coming in just to talk about the events of today, and of course Mairi Devlin up there in the top under, which you may see there, what, 100th show. Right, Mairi, what have you got to say?
Good evening, everyone. I can't believe it's the 100th show. Time flies. Wow. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about the impending collapse of Scotland's justice system, and I've got very important news apart from that.
Oh, yes, I've heard that you will be revealing the exact date of when Scotland breaks away from the United Kingdom
and gains independence from the UK. So stay tuned. I will indeed prepare to be amazed.
Right, okay. And but that's normally Mystic DG's job here. Mystic DG, what have you got for us today?
Just today, as we're all going to be talking, I guess, about the COVID inquiry, I thought I'd take a very brief look at some headline reaction to the testimony of our dear ex-First Leader.
Right, and Mark, actually, you will be joining us as well. There you are. Say hi.
Good evening.
Right. Okay. So anyway, we'll all be, Mark, David, Mairi, myself, we'll all be talking about the events of today. Sturgeon's testimony to the UK COVID inquiry. And of course, we will have Zoomer of the week.
Yay.
All right. So we will see you back in just a moment with that and much more. Right, welcome back to Scotland's #1 politics chat. Our objective is a thriving Scotland without the toxic nationalism that has strangled Scotland's potential. Here tonight on our 100th show with David and Mairi and Mark, and really glad you can join us. And we're going to be talking, of course, about the events of today. As always, though, first, a huge thanks to our friends, UK Union Voice and United Against Separation Facebook pages, where many of you are watching from tonight.
And remember, sharing is caring. The #1 thing you can do is to like the show on YouTube, guys. The number of YouTube followers is growing all the time. Wonderful. And even if you don't subscribe, just drop a like. If you can subscribe, of course, please do so to increase the reach of the show at the click of one button.
And in fact, we just passed 2,000 subscribers for the show, which is great. Thank you all for your support so far and for believing in us. Also, please have a look, if you can, the Majority shop, which is on our website, and which you can buy fabulous merchandise like this Majority t-shirt, mouse mats, mugs, Abolish Holyrood, mouse mats, t-shirts, and so on as well. Okay, Mairi, sorry, shoot.
And of course, I'll be managing your mountain of comments tonight. So please keep them short and snappy, and I'll try to get as many up on screen as I can.
Right, okay. It's the 100th show, though, Mairi. It's quite amazing that we've got this far. Thank you for watching. Did you write this in here?
I did.
Okay. And as it's our 100th birthday, perhaps you would like to send us a little birthday present by making a donation to the Majority Show. Any amount helps and is appreciated, of course. Actually, as an organisation, we've been going for just under 4 years, and we only really survive through the help of
kindness and charity.
Yes, that's it. The kindness of our sponsors. So if you would like to join them, please do so. And we hope that will continue for another 100 shows. Now, Mairi, what have you enjoyed about these last 100 shows?
Well, when we started the shows, we started back in December 2021, believe it or not. The SNP and Nicola Sturgeon appeared to be too powerful and too hard to beat. But I believe that partly because of our show and all the majority's work, and of course, alongside all the pro-UK people on social media, by shining a light, as was said
Yay.
today, on their dirty shenanigans, we have achieved the end of the SNP and nationalism rule in Scotland.
Yes.
And the best bit is we, all the viewers and us, have fun and a good laugh while we do it.
Well, we try our best. But this is true. I mean, at the beginning when we started, there was well, one of the reasons, in fact, the main reasons we started this was because people were so demoralised, and really just it seemed there were very few people fighting in our corner, and certainly not many that were making an impact. And that's not to say that some weren't, but we were able to get out there, and I think with some strong messaging that really helped. David, you've been with us for a long time as well. How have you enjoyed this past 100 episodes?
Well, I've enjoyed it very much. I would say I've been struck with the way the show has progressed in terms of its reach, because I can remember from the very earliest episode, and I tried to get online in the very first episode, and I sat in the waiting room for an hour with the wee thing spinning. That's what it was like. Back then, we were a little bit green at all of this. Anyway, but I do remember thinking, now, is this going to have any impact? Because you could say we're just operating in like an anti-nationalist echo chamber, and really, is anybody going to take any notice? Was my concern, I guess, or just my initial thought. But I was really surprised when I met people right pretty much from the start. And I said, oh, yeah, I appear on a podcast, as they used to call it. And they said, oh, which one of the majority? Oh, really? I've subscribed to them. Yeah, right, of course, I didn't know that. Really amazing. But what I have enjoyed very much is through being a contributor to the majority, having the opportunity to appear and be interviewed on several TV news shows, not for a while, right enough, but it was good fun, and I like that very much. It's also been quite strange to be recognised in public places. Oh, you did.
Fame at last.
David, that happened to me at the weekend. I just want to give a quick shout out to Janet, who stopped me in Tesco's to ask if I was the woman on the telly.
Brilliant. Well done, Janet. But I mean, it's quite...
Thanks, Janet.
It's quite amazing. I remember being literally downstairs outside my flat. Yeah, I mean, it's just so amazing. But it's particularly at like demonstrations and stuff like that, if there are any events going on, very regularly, Kate, whom I know very well now from Prestwick, she met me there. A guy at Rangers when I was up at the AGM said, David Griffiths majority, that's right, yeah. It's an amazing thing. Not something I ever thought I would experience, but it's been terrific, but because my ego, it's been great. But what I would say most of all, though, just being part of a growing movement, and a movement that's grown massively in scale and now has undeniable momentum, and that is the movement to get toxic nationalism out of Scotland. So yeah, great to participate in something that's worthy and is absolutely right.
Thank you very much for that,
Thank you.
David. Now, Mark, you're fairly new here. How's it been for you so far?
Well, I think I've watched the show before, and now being on the other side and contributing to the show, I think I've found what I've noticed is how hard you guys work to put this show on, what the professionalism that you do, and I think it's been quite interesting watching that, and I didn't realize. I actually didn't realize, and I'm not sure too many people do, how much hard work it actually is to put this show on. And,
well, we're running around like crazy today, anyway, trying to get a track of what's been going on.
We were sitting in front of the TV at 10 o'clock this morning. Obviously, we were there till 4, and then we, scribbling notes away and trying to put the whole thing together for tonight.
Right.
But it is a pleasure.
Yeah, well, I think I echo all your sentiments there. I mean, the main thing is that I'm humbled that you people out there do want to watch us on a Wednesday night and to share the horror show of Scottish politics with us every week. And you think our opinions are worth listening to? That is very good. So thank you all for your support. Now, in a second, we are going to talk about the main event of the day. Thank you very much, Alan. Which, of course, Nicola Sturgeon's COVID testimony. So we'll be back in just a second. Right. Well, it was a big day. We were waiting for that for a long time there, and it finally came up. How was it for you? As say, and actually, before Sturgeon's appearance, we ran a poll asking if she would be able to deflect most of the questions that were put to her. But I do believe that Jamie Dawson KC filleted the fish. Precise and methodical at times. Even I felt under pressure. It's like when he makes some kind of statement like, "You politicised the pandemic." Wasn't that true? And you're like, oh, like you just get that tone, that very, very calm tone. Nothing could ruffle the guy, you think. Anyway, compare that, for example, with Dorothy Bain, who we call Surrender Dorothy, because it looks every day as though she's going into court as though her dog has just died and that she doesn't actually want to be there. So this is a change for us to see someone who seems actually quite competent, professional, methodical, deliberate, insightful, understanding completely their brief and what's going on. Were you impressed with him, David?
Massively, just in terms of his demeanour, and I thought he played it just right. He wasn't bombastic at all. It was more like the death of 1,000 cuts than anything else, really. And his last line was great, about hubris, the hubris of Nicola Sturgeon. What was it he said? Did that represent Scotland's COVID battle? And she just looked like she just sat in a hairbrush and said, "Oh no, it didn't." So no, it was magnificent. I thought he's exactly the right tone and the right bearing for a guy in that role. He just looks the part, talks the talk. Wonderful. I thought he was very, very impressive indeed.
Yes, indeed. Now let's compare that with Nicola Sturgeon's demeanour. Appearing in a black suit, she looked like she was going to her own funeral. Although it's not often you get an opportunity to see someone dig their own grave. Hubris, I think, is a good word. A belief that what is hubris really? It's like you've got so self-regard, exactly. I guess, and the feeling that you perhaps fail. Pride comes before fall. I guess the expression goes. Now, what were we subjected to? Rambling on. Can she not say one word when 10 will do? Or no, she cannot say 10 words when one word will do. Just goes on. And of course, talking as fast as the terms and conditions on a payday loan TV ad. Basically. So what is even the stenographer?
And that's how we feel. We feel as if we're being cheated.
The stenographer was like, her fingers were on fire. It sounds like a Morrissey song, "Stenographer on Fire." His next one there. And of course, the blinks were on overtime. So many blinks that you'd think if her eyelids were wings, she would take off. Now,
I like this comment. Who'd have thunk that fallen Queen Nicola would have been seen as a quivering wreck today on the anniversary of your 100th show? It was planned all along.
Everything is lining up, and in a strange twist of fate, this is a little personal thing. My grandmother was born 100 years ago today, so that's another 100.
Maybe she's looking over us.
Well, there you go. Anyway, that aside, what about the waffle, Mark? How much waffle can a person waffle?
I thought she looked really nervous. I've not seen her, even when she's been under pressure, I've not seen her look so nervous and so twitchy, waiting for that first question. She looked terrified of what was to come, and it showed. It really showed. But I have to be careful here because I don't want to cry on TV. I'm going to try and not to cry. So I'll keep the tears to a minimum if I can, if it's possible.
Brave.
Right. Well, thank you. Also, I just noticed there that John or Jean, it might probably Jean, being Scotland rather than France. Jean Perry put in £10 as a super thanks.
Thank you very much.
That is great. Thank
nice
you very much. And of course, you can use super thanks, super stickers to help to donate to the show as it goes on, or you can go to the majority's donations page on on our website. Okay, let's see. So demeanour wasn't that great at all. Where am I here? Okay, so first thing is, one thing that really surprised me here was that our total recall of the minutiae of events. This is in direct comparison with a certain Mr. Alex Salmond. I remember back when there was, how many times did she say, "I can't recall, I don't remember, and so on. David?
Well, I mean, you've seen all three faces of Nicola Sturgeon when it comes to being asked her recollection. First of all, the very first thing with Salmond was she was asked if she ever had private messages with them. It was Sophie Ridge and Sky who asked her, and Sturgeon sat with her phone and said, "I can read them to you now if you want." And Sophie Ridge said, "Yeah, please do, go ahead, do it right now, please." And so she started reading these text messages, WhatsApp messages from Salmond from 3 years previously. Then she's in front of an inquiry into the behaviour of her government during the Salmond, if you like, prosecution, and suddenly she can't remember whether it's New York or New Year. It was unbelievable. It's like she's had amnesia overnight. Now, fast forward to today's inquiry, she can remember everything again. Absolutely. She's remembering dates. 5th of October, yes, I think that was a Friday.
Yeah.
How are you doing
that type of stuff?
Oh, it's just ridiculous. As you can see, when it suits, she can't remember her name. When it doesn't suit her, when it suits her to be to be far sharper, well, she'll remember it all right. So it's just disgraceful, really. She's clearly at it. It's as simple as that.
At it. That is a good expression. At it. Yes, it does seem quite a distinction between the I can't recall, fuzzy memory to, as you say, yes, I had, knowing exactly what kind of tea biscuit she had with her tea on a particular day in a particular meeting. Although some of the details, again, were sketchy when it didn't suit her. Now, we're going to come back in a second with all about deletion of messages, the deleter in chief. Right, so thank you for joining us tonight on our 100th show. You can probably work out the show is just under 2 years, so we have been doing this for a while. And
it's just over 2 years.
Is it over 2 years?
Yeah.
100? No, 52, Mary.
What? But we don't.
You have 2 week gap twice at Christmas.
We started in December 2021.
Yeah, just about that. All right, anyway, 2 years, so that's been really great. We've had a lot of good times on the show. And we don't delete them. They're available there on YouTube. But someone else deletes their social media output, and that person is called Nicola Sturgeon. So let's have a look at what might be the biggest lie of all here. Now, let me see if I can get this. So let's which one is it? It's this one.
However, the discussions relating to the decisions and how they had been reached could, it would appear, be kept secret.
Well, I would like to give an assurance to the inquiry that, contrary to there being any desire on the part of me or my government to keep things secret, I would suggest that the opposite was the case during the pandemic.
Okay, David, any thoughts on that one? Sorry, there you go.
The usual cheek, isn't it? Really, I mean, she's confronted with very clear evidence, if you like, of something she's done, and she's got the nerve to sit and say, "Oh no, I can assure you that wasn't ever our intention at all. No, certainly not." Honestly, it's surprising her nose isn't growing. Seriously, it's just so blatant.
Yes. I mean, it does seem a little bit strange that one day she says that she didn't. A few weeks ago, she said she didn't delete any WhatsApp messages, and then next, in front of the inquiry, she said that she did delete them. Let's have a look at this one here, whether they deleted or not.
You obviously didn't have those on your own devices because you deleted them, hadn't you?
I didn't retain them in line with the procedure I've already talked about.
Are you creating a distinction between deletion and retain?
No.
You had deleted them, had you not?
I think deletion, forgive me, I think sounds as if it was a sort of, not bothering to check whether any information was being retained. I was very thorough, and not just in the pandemic, but in all my work in government, to ensure that things were appropriately recorded, but in line with the advice I'd always been given since my first day in government probably was not to retain conversations like that on a phone that could be lost or stolen and therefore not secure.
But did you delete them?
Yes.
And as far as the other messages are concerned that you couldn't produce yourself between you and all these others, you deleted all of those as well?
In the manner that and after the process that I have set out, yes.
Aye, by pressing the delete button, you mean? Yeah, well done.
Well, she didn't retain them, but she deleted them.
Yes.
I don't know. Is that a distinction? Distinction without a difference.
She was trying to come up with something, but she really couldn't come up with how delete was different from didn't retain.
Indeed.
And actually, just before he'd asked that, she said that she didn't recall her own government sending out "Do not destroy" warning,
Exactly.
explaining the importance of keeping crucial pandemic communications. She said she didn't receive it.
You didn't, yeah, right, okay.
Yeah, it's all a little bit weird, this, because it's all like, I didn't delete them according to the policy. Well, who made the policy? Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Oh, I deleted them, sorry, according to the
I mean, this
policy.
policy
I
that
did,
they made up.
they're like,
The policy being delete whatever the hell you like. If anything's important, we'll keep it from. I get it from another source, and then we'll present it. But not all of it, of course. And we'll decide what's important and what's not. So if you don't like it, tough. And that's the policy. So great.
Yes, I was surprised though a little bit that according to the Glasgow Herald, or the Herald now I suppose it's called, two Sundays ago they said that the inquiry had all of Sturgeon's WhatsApps, but we didn't see them at the inquiry at all. Perhaps that wasn't entirely true, that story. Anyway, still some strange things in that testimony as well. She'd a partly retained message that suited her, like the one to Leach, where she advised him to stick to formal communications processes. How convenient is that? That the only one there is one saying, let's abide by all this.
Yeah, right.
Mark, you any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I just find it really strange that none of them use they use their own devices, and none of them use a government phone. And their excuse, Sturgeon's today was the same as Freeman's, was the same as Sweeney's.
Yeah.
I don't use two devices because I may lose one. Well, come on.
Yes, it's a bit strange, that, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, how often do you lose a phone?
Yeah, it's like, well, if you can't keep two phones for the job you're doing, then you shouldn't be in that job, because the government ministers, some government ministers at Westminster and that, they'll have 3 or 4 phones, and they're quite capable of keeping them phones and knowing which one's what, which one's which.
Yeah.
I just find the whole, and I think Mr. Dawson touched on it the other day, when he stated when they said, well, it's policy to delete, and Mr. Dawson said, well, is that not is the policy not wrong then? Have you got the policy wrong? And and you've just said it yourself, Sturgeon was the one who set the policy. So obviously she's wrong to have set that kind of a policy for a government. I've never known a government to delete as much as what they've deleted.
No.
It's very strange, and I just find it quite disturbing that, especially during a COVID time, and especially when Sturgeon said to that reporter on the stage, I will keep,
Yes.
I
In
know
fact,
I have to keep everything, and I will do, no matter, even if it wasn't because of an inquiry that's on its way, I would still keep everything. That's what she said on stage. Okay. Everyone heard her.
Yes, of course.
Yes,
and here,
exactly
this isn't the clip, but this is Dawson actually asking her about the clip.
Where he asked you at that very press conference in August 2021, Scottish Government has a patchy record of disclosing evidence when asked to do so. Can you guarantee to the bereaved families that you will disclose emails, WhatsApps, private emails, if you've been using them, whatever, that nothing will be off limits to the inquiry? You responded, I think if you understand statutory public inquiries, you would know that even if I wasn't prepared to give that assurance, which for the avoidance of doubt I am, then I wouldn't have the ability. He asked specific questions about informal means of communication, including WhatsApps, but you knew by that stage that your WhatsApps had been destroyed.
But I also knew that anything of any relevance or substance from any of that material would be properly recorded in the Scottish Government system, and indeed would have been communicated in all likelihood by me through the daily media briefings that I gave. The importance, in my view, is making sure that the inquiry has at its disposal all of the evidence underpinning the decisions, as well as the decisions we were arriving at. I operated.
Well, quite clearly, the inquiry doesn't have all the evidence and the stuff that's underpinning the decisions. She basically has making her own definition of what that is, and what we have left with is a couple of
self-serving.
We've got a couple of text messages that we've seen from Jason Leach, Humza, and that type of stuff, and a couple of handwritten notes. And Sturgeon seems to have this idea that the decision itself is the thing that they made. She was going on this thing, remember, about it being public. This is public. Of course, it's public. It's not confidential. That's what she was saying, right? She was saying these decisions were not confidential. But that's the result of the decision. It's not confidential. Of course, if you make a decision to say, yes, we're going to close all the schools, then the public has to know that. That's the result of the decision. But what she tried to blur the lines there and say that actually the way they made that decision was public, and it wasn't. Of course, they used all kinds of methods to do that, personal talking, bits of paper, all whatever it is, phone calls and so on, as you would expect, yet there is no record of any of that at all, David.
Yeah, that's exactly it. She's trying to say, okay, we got to this agreement here, and okay, so where's all the stuff showing how you got to that agreement? Oh, well, we just kept the stuff that was germane, don't worry. The rest of the stuff, we deleted everything, obviously. But, we released the stuff that, and honestly, we didn't miss anything that was important. You wouldn't want to see it. It's really boring, honestly. We're only going to release the stuff that's actually contributed to the decision-making process. And you're left going, hang on a minute, you're supposed to be revealing everything. That's what we said very clearly you were going to do. And she's got the cheek to say, oh, well, if I wasn't clear enough when I said I'd release everything. What I meant, of course, I'm not going to release everything. Are you mad? Me release everything? I'll release exactly what I want to, Buster, because that's the policy. I mean, it's just a joke. She's making the policy up and then hiding behind her own policy as a mitigation for her own appalling actions. I mean, what? It's just laughable. I'm a little surprised that the judge especially wasn't a little harder on her today and didn't say, "Look, are you serious? This just sounds so fake."
Well, I think
you have to remember as well. Sorry, Matt. You have to remember as well that we only got the information from Humza's phone because he couldn't figure out how to delete it properly. Because if he'd have deleted it properly,
that's not
we
a
would never have
surprise,
seen that evidence. It's only because he thought because it was an old phone and he took the SIM out. That means that then messages disappeared. And he didn't realise if you put the SIM back in, then messages reappear. He didn't.
Was that the one he found down
properly?
He found it down the back of the sofa.
Yeah, or else we wouldn't have known.
This idea.
Half.
This idea that they can lose a phone. It's a government phone. It's got security on it and so on. That's the whole point of the thing. It's not so that you lose your cheapy phone that you've got at home. It's not got a password or properly encrypted communications or whatever on it. This is the thing, and this is this whole idea of. Some talk about burner phones as well. Did you hear?
She denied that she had ever used any of the burner phones.
Right.
But didn't we see the police at our house and in our garden looking for burner phones?
We did, and they released the information.
She said, "Well, I used those burner phones, but I didn't use these burner phones."
Exactly. The police also released the information that they were looking for burner phones and SIM cards.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and she said basically they were going to be used in her constituency offices. Well, in that case, wait a minute, that's SNP work. That's not Scottish Government work. Why are they on expenses? But it takes a special kind of imbecile, I suppose, to order a burner phone and put it on expenses.
Brilliant, isn't it? Right.
We really are talking with a certain level of imbecile there. Okay, we've got a little bit more on this. This is actually all of this part, I think.
Well,
okay.
I just wanted to point out, I liked it when Dawson basically had her telt. He said it might be for the Scottish people to judge what was relevant.
Well, that's true.
Right.
That is very true. And that's the point of this thing. It's not for Nicola Sturgeon to judge. And I think she was so used to having things her own way that... and being the centre of things and not having people question her, that she felt that, of course, her decisions were the right ones. And we'll come on to that in the next section. So we'll be back in a section. Thank you for being with us. We have got the most viewers we've ever had on the show right now. So thank you if you're new to the show. This is the only place you will hear this type of conversation. BBC and other media outlets captured by nationalists and you never hear this type of free and open discussion critical of Nicola Sturgeon and anywhere else. So please stay with us for the rest of the time. We're going to run a little bit long, of course, because of today's events. We'll be back in a second. Right, so we're going to talk about the centralisation of decision making. Right, so first thing was that Kate Forbes picked out, not allowed to participate in these gold member meetings. No, I just said that
She was never invited.
Gold command meetings. Secret, in fact, that nobody knew about. Not cabinet meetings. This is the important part of it. But gold member meetings where they got to get together to sit in golden chairs and discuss their nefarious plans. Like supervillains. No, not like that. Much more low grade than that. Anyway, so now she took great pains to say, "Oh, because it was gold, it didn't really mean anything." But of course, it means something. You know, it wasn't bronze. Member bronze command, was it? You know,
No.
So we're going to have a tin meeting. I don't mean, okay, all right. But actually, that's the level of it anyway. Now, I had a video of Forbes about that, but I can't seem to find it. So we're just going to talk about her not being invited to the table.
Well, Dawson said to Nicola Sturgeon, he said, she wasn't one of the right people to have around the table, was she?
That's very true. I forgot that. I'm just checking here. No.
And then they had a big kick off about the fact that Humza maybe suggested using £100 million of funds, and Sturgeon went absolutely tonto. Shouldn't that sort of discussion be held in the company of, I don't know, maybe the finance secretary? How's that for an idea? You know,
well, I mean, we're having discussions all the time about the impact on business, yet they didn't have the finance secretary there. Now, they had the economy secretary, Fiona Hislop, who is pal of Sturgeon and who has the brain the size of a walnut and knows nothing about the economy and is basically a party hack. So, and not to say that Kate Forbes is much better, but the fact that she was excluded from these meetings tells you quite a lot about what's going on there. A bit like the Hamilton song, if you've seen that, you want to be in the room where it happens. Well, Kate wasn't in the room where it happens. She was shut out. Now, she said, Sturgeon went on to say that there was a high degree of formality in decision making. David, how can there be a high degree of formality in decision making when there's no minutes?
Exactly. I mean, I would suggest, guys, if you're listening, anyone from the SNP government, if you want to show formality, all you have to do is demonstrate it through the use of pretty much standard aids, such as minutes with actions against people's names. It really is quite standard, this. I think you'll find it's been the accepted practice for, I don't know, decades. But why you think you can run
longer?
Hundreds of years.
Exactly. Indeed. So why you think you could lead the fight against a potentially devastating pandemic without even taking minutes of a meeting and leaving out key people, apart from your old pals from Glasgow Uni, like Fiona Hislop and your friend Liz Lloyd? They were clearly the right sort of people to be in the room, but not the finance secretary. So I think this just shows a lot of things. It shows that there were very deep divisions within the SNP, even the high command. We all remember that photograph of Kate Forbes standing up speaking and Sturgeon sitting down next to her, looking at her, and you know the phrase, if looks could kill, she's looking at her with unbridled hate.
Well, not just that. There's a famous Humza and Sturgeon, finger snap, shut the F up.
Not now, exactly.
And who does that? If my boss did that to me in a company, I'd be like, what? That would set me off, and I think it would set a lot of people off. You just went, on that, So apparently, according to Nicola Sturgeon, minuting is a learning point.
A learning point, isn't that great? I could have taught them that. Seriously.
A learning point, right?
So, I mean, as well, they didn't have any minutes. They don't even know who was at these meetings.
Exactly.
Well, that's the point.
And we don't know what kind of paperwork was generated for them.
But did you know, actually, there were two ministers for this public health policy, and I can't remember what the other one was. Never heard of them at all. In fact, it took an article in the Daily Record or something to kind of out them. Now, these are people who are paid, what was it, 90,000 a year plus expenses.
Right.
and but they never saw them, never made a public pronouncement. Who made the public pronouncements? Was it the health secretary,
Yeah.
Humza Yousaf? No, it really wasn't. Who was on the podium every day?
I wonder. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Not Jean Freeman. Certainly not. They couldn't possibly trust her to say anything about her brief, so they had to get Nicola to do it instead.
Don't talk about Jean Freeman's briefs. I mean, please, it's a family show. Okay, so
Please no.
right. Okay, so where we got here? Yes, we already mentioned that. Now let's see what we've got here. The shine a light. It says.
Kind of like,
Let's have a look and see. Let's shine a light. Oh yes, this is it.
Developing in the areas we've already looked at, Ms Sturgeon, that the Scottish Government does not like light to be shined on the way in which discussions leading to decisions have taken place.
That is the understatement of the century.
Well, that's so, isn't it? So understated. The Scottish Government does not like a light shown on its decisions. Perhaps they're vampires. Who knows? They're averse to sunlight, averse to the cleaning power of transparency and openness, which they keep talking about. Remember all that transparency and openness, Mark?
Open and transparent.
Yes, it makes a bit of a mockery of that. But I just found it really interesting because I think the way Mr. Dawson was talking about this, what he was leading it to was you made the decisions at this gold group that you had,
yes,
which was just a small group of her friends, and then you took it to the cabinet, who were just there to rectify that. They made decisions, and the ministers just said, "Yes, okay, yes."
Well, I don't even think I didn't even think it went as far as that. I think the decisions were made, and I don't think anything was ever put to the cabinet. It was like, we've made these decisions. Yeah. And they're like, well, I'm fine getting my salary. I don't care.
Yeah, I think that's, to me, listening to today and listening for the last couple of weeks, it just shows you that this is not just over COVID. We're talking about her tenure as 10 years as the First Minister.
Yes.
This is how she acted for the whole 10 years. We've never had, as Mr. Dawson put it a few times, we have a cabinet system. And it's really in our constitution that the cabinet makes decisions in government. We had a dictator making the decisions and 28 ministers just rectifying whatever she said.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, they're paid £100,000 each for 28 ministers. And all they were there basically to do was say, "Yes, miss," when she told them what to do. And that I find quite incredible. And that shows you how much of a dictator she is.
Well, I think I think this is reasonable to say, because basically, that what is a dictatorship? A dictatorship is the central person makes all the decisions, and everyone around rubber stamps it because they're party hacks, right? And the people around are promoted purely on their party loyalty, not on their actual ability or competence. Now, we've seen that. That's what 10 years or longer of the SNP has been all about. So, is it fair to say that if someone is dictating what's going to happen all the time with no discussion, then fair enough. I think it's reasonable to call them a dictator in that case. This culture of secrecy, though, has, I think, gone on for too long. And one thing perhaps you could say as well is that, wouldn't it be great if there was more scrutiny on the Scottish government? Right, a jumped up assembly and these 28 ministers. Why isn't the UK government having them up there saying every year, what's the annual review? What are these 28 ministers, for example? And all the other questions about where is the missing money? What did you do here? It's not a parallel government. That's the thing that we have to get out of our heads. I think it's become so powerful in the media and in perception to some extent that it's almost like a parallel government. It's a devolved administration.
I think that came out today, Mark. I think that came out today, especially when she stated that the Westminster government was the outlier.
Yes.
In making a decision. No, the Westminster government is the government for the whole of the UK. It's where our government is and our government sits. When they make a decision, that's not the outlier. That's the decision for the whole of the country and for the benefit of the whole of the country. Like, for instance, the furlough scheme. Sturgeon was angry and upset because they weren't getting the date of the furlough scheme wasn't being extended into the second lockdown.
That's right.
Well, I'm sorry, but them decisions were for the UK
Yeah,
government.
of course. That's right. And we'll talk a little bit more about politicising the pandemic in a section in a couple of minutes. Sorry, a new segment. However, what we will be talking about next is the tears of a clown, and we will just be back in a few seconds. Thank you for being with us on our 100th show. It's been great to have you. Some of you have been watching for a long time, and some of you are new. And we hope you enjoy what you see. Here, of course, with Mairi, who's doing all the chat messages, and David and Mark Zegfeld helping with commentary. Of course, Mairi jumps in there now as well. So, sadly, it all got too much for St. Nicola. She had done so much for the people of Scotland, and they just didn't appreciate it. Instead of showering her with love, they were questioning her motives. How dare they? She felt like she could cry, and then she did.
So I think that answer has to be seen within that context.
Did you consider yourself, against that background and your considerable ministerial experience, to be precisely the right First Minister for the job?
No, that's not how I would have thought of it at all. I was the First Minister when the pandemic struck. There's a large part of me wishes that I hadn't been, but I was, and I wanted to be the best First Minister I could be during that period. It's for others to judge the extent to which I succeeded.
Right, quite a display there, and it was repeated a couple other times as well, voice breaking and so on. Almost certainly when it came to a more personal discussion, were you responsible, were you this thing or not? And then that was the voice breaking and so on. We could see, as soon as that happened, I could see the headlines being written already. Emotional, Nicola Sturgeon tears up. It was just me doing the best for the people of Scotland. So the media grab onto it. And of course, nationalists will hang on to that as well. She was just our Nicola doing the best she possibly can. A Janie Gordley voiceover is incoming. So the question I have, though, is why were there no tears on the party political broadcast that she was doing every day? And why does she think it's professional to do that? Surely, if she's the kind of person who's going to cry when she's under pressure of a public inquiry, wasn't she making emotional decisions then through the life and death decisions of the pandemic? David?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it struck me as being entirely fake. Oh, I have to be honest, I don't mean to sound hard-hearted, but if you cry, you cry. You don't start wobbling your chin and saying, part of me wishes I hadn't. That's not real tears. Come on.
Oh, you wanted the whole flow.
Absolutely. When you can't, I know what it's like having spoken at funerals and stuff, and you literally can't get your words out. You choke up. I've choked up when I've been talking to you guys in the past about, issues that some stuff that's happened in the past, and that is not, absolutely categorically not how you actually communicate when you're overcome. You can't speak properly. That's what it's like. Your words literally stick in your throat. That was fake. It was put on. I don't believe it for a second. And she only produced a similar outburst when she was asked the same question again. So it was like a trigger. Did you do a good job? Oh, I think so. Well, I really wanted to. What a load of rubbish. No, I don't believe in any of it.
Yes, perhaps she was keeping a little onion in her pocket just for the opportunity.
Lemon juice.
Mark, you any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it was. On her part, I think it was quite a clever move, because I've seen on news stations the narrative, and it was pictures of Sturgeon crying. And that seemed to be that they focused on that,
of course,
rather than the contents of the inquiry. That was what everyone else was concentrating on. And I think that was a ploy in the first instance to try, knowing that the likes of STV and the likes of Sky and the likes of BBC would concentrate on her headlines. Sturgeon's upset, Sturgeon cries for Scottish people. And that was the headlines, instead of this woman's
Deleted messages.
deleted messages, play politics.
Yes.
That kind of gets washed over. So I do think, I'm not going to give her any credit, but I do think it was on her behalf a good ploy to use, and she didn't half use it, because you knew she was going to cry because she took her glasses off for full effect, so you could see the tears. You couldn't see the tears if she had the glasses on. So every time she took the glasses off, I thought, here comes the tears, and it did. So
okay. Interesting analysis there. Of course, she said that she what was it? She says, a large part of me wishes I hadn't been the First Minister. Well, it was a large part of us.
Large part of Scotland.
Yes, wishes she hadn't been the First Minister during the pandemic also. So perhaps we're in some agreement there. Now, she went on, tears aside, she went on then to claim that she hadn't politicised the pandemic. Now, okay. I mean, most of this argument seemed to be about that she was responsible to the people of Scotland. This is, you said a little bit earlier there, Mark, that in fact she's not responsible for the people. What does that mean, responsible for the people of Scotland? The people of Scotland are UK citizens. All right. So actually, if the UK says something, as you say, rightly pointed out, they're furlough, then, that's a UK thing. Now, of course, we have to say this Four Nations nonsense should never have been started in the first place. It was a recipe for division. And there was no need for it. I mean, it was inevitable that nationalists would politicise it, right? She said, though, her big excuse seemed to be that... let me see, you've got it here. She said it was okay to do it because the UK government was also doing it. Now, the UK government may have said this is a benefit of the union because we can do this furlough scheme and so on. I mean, even that's bad language, the benefit of the union. It's like, we're not in a union for a start. One country, and I need to get this through UK ministers' heads to some extent, far too indulgent of nationalist tropes. But she said it was okay to do it. Let's have a listen to this one.
On the 23rd of July 2020, Sturgeon?
I do.
Yes, and this is a tweet by you where you say, I welcome the PM to Scotland today. One of the key arguments for independence is the ability of Scotland to take our own decisions, rather than having our future decided by politicians we didn't vote for, taking us down a path we haven't chosen. His presence highlights that. This is a political tweet relating to your support for the cause of independence in July 2020, isn't it?
It is, but it's also a response to the Prime Minister at the time coming to Scotland and very overtly describing that visit as
very happy here.
A mission to save the union. I think he had first-person pieces in at least one newspaper ahead of that. Now, reflection, should I have risen to the debate and posted that tweet? Probably not. But I would never even have been in that space at all, but for the pretext of the Prime Minister's visit. I was also...
Yes, basically, a big boy did it and ran away. Big boy, in this case, being the UK government did it first. I mean, really, it's like, and the whole tone. There was a whole tone of this, wasn't there? That she was making the right decisions, and the UK COVID inquiry, which not COVID inquiry, UK COVID, what's it called? Decision makers. I mean, they were actual, people who knew what they were doing, and even they were making mistakes. You had people who were actual epidemiologists and all this type of stuff. People actually knew what they were talking about. We had a dentist, and an American nut job. That's what we had. So, how did she think that she was making better decisions? Because she was Scottish.
Exactly. And it was really interesting when she was questioned on that today, because he went through the medical and professional qualifications of all of the people who were top team like Calderwood and Jason Leach and these guys, and he said, so you've got a dentist and a gynecologist and somebody else. You really think that's the best sort of mixture of skills you need? You need anybody who's in any way connected with virology or bacteriology and epidemiology. And she says, well, of course, I don't pick them. Well, I'm just the First Minister. That's not to me. You know, I just straight away start. Well, it wasn't me. You know, straight away. She couldn't avoid it. She couldn't even answer the question. But, well, yeah, it was quite a range of skills, but maybe nobody was directly involved or had direct experience of this particular thing. So, yes, in hindsight, might be. But straight away she said, it wasn't me. I didn't do it.
Yeah, I know. It's quite interesting that she's quite happy. She knows what she's going to say. You can see it in her face. Yeah, they did it first. So as if that's some kind of excuse. And the UK Prime Minister visiting Scotland is not a nationalist event. You know, that's entirely the UK Prime Minister's right to do so. And we said that before, I mean, many years ago when we first started even this show, and maybe the majority, when the Scottish Conservatives were saying, saying Boris shouldn't come to Scotland because they're a bunch of idiots. And, you know, but... here's Nicola Sturgeon using that visit as a way to create division and so on as well. Yep. Further to that, she used the pandemic as to further the cause of independence. We saw a letter from Spain that was produced. It was from, actually an email from John Swinney to Sturgeon explicitly stating that Spain should be given special travel corridor status in fear of that Spanish government veto a future independent Scotland's entry to the EU. It reads, it won't matter how much ministers might justify it on health grounds. The Spanish government will conclude it's entirely political. They won't forget there's a real possibility they will never approve EU membership for independent Scotland as a result.
Yeah.
Did you see that, Mark?
I thought that was. I couldn't stop laughing at that, to be honest with you, because it was as if
I didn't say that. Sorry about that comment.
But in 2014 we voted to stay in the UK. Now, how is that respecting that vote that the majority of Scotland want to stay in the UK by worrying about an EU membership that's never going to happen anyway?
It's so delusional, the whole thing.
Yeah, it was mentioned as if it was inevitable that was going to happen. We're going to join the EU. Well, I'm sorry, we're not. We're never going to join
get independence.
We're part of the UK. I just found it quite. It was like they're acting as if we are independent when we are not. And they're acting as if they won the vote when they didn't.
Quite.
Well, I always said that they act as though they won the referendum, and the UK pro-UK sides act as though it lost, and that balance is changing somewhat now. But it's still not quite right. As I just mentioned, the UK government needs to be firm on these type of things and say this four nations nonsense. I mean, really. Why? England and Wales. Let's just put them together. It's 50 million people. And we've got a whole set of ministers and all this, and COVID restrictions, all their own things for 5 million people. Not necessary. It's just tick an extra box at the bottom of the UK. The UK.
And what's more important? Stopping the transmission of the disease coming in from Spain or upsetting Spain, and they obviously thought upsetting Spain was more of a worse than stopping a virus coming in from people travelling. That was their idea, and it coincided with restrictions being lifted by Spain into Scotland.
Yeah.
At the same, was it a couple of weeks later they lifted them? I know they and Sturgeon made a big thing of but we put them back on. But they only put them back on because of the numbers and the UK government putting pressure on them to put them, put that restriction back on. And that was the only reason that restriction got put back on, is because of the pressure that the UK government was saying, look, Spain's numbers are getting quite worrying. We've banned them from travelling. Why are you allowing it? And the pressure was put back on, but they obviously thought it was more important that they didn't want to upset Spain because of future
support.
EU.
Yeah.
It is insanity. It's like layers of insanity on top of each other, layers of delusion on top of each other. And we're going to get independent, we're going to get EU. So that means that we can't let Spanish people in right now because this other thing is going to happen. You're like, I'd like to think you're a big brain thinking about this, but maybe your first principles aren't quite right, Just absolutely ridiculous. No, she did pandemic. She did pandemic. The politise. She did politicise the pandemic. Of course, who can forget the daily party political broadcast and nutters on the border, all caused by her and her advisor as well. And not even mentioned. I talked about Devi Sridhar there. She was going on about. We mentioned this last week, going on about how unionists were anti-Scottish and so on. Stuff like that, and we have to take it as who benefits, right? So she benefited because during that time that she was on the telly every day saying we're better than England, then her poll ratings went up. Her personal favourability was huge. She was getting tons of press. Piers Morgan was all over her, and she was. And the cause of independence was rising as well. It went up, and they were thinking, well, maybe we'll get to our mythical 60%, which is, of course, the bunk number about itself. But and now we're beginning to find out, or we have found out, that none of that really was the case. Results weren't any better, if not in many cases worse, than the rest of the UK, care home deaths and so on. But more than that, just that the way they ran this administration, the way they ran these decisions was secretive and divisive.
Yeah.
David?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the primary consideration was not how do we keep people safe? It was how do we keep the pot boiling in independence? What can we do here that's going to help? That's really, and of course, what can we do that will make me personally, Nicola Sturgeon, look like the person who's really on the ball? That's what the primary considerations were. We've seen that. Some of the decisions, as I'll touch on in a second, certainly did not have the best interests of Scottish people's health at their foundation. Manifestly not. So, yeah, we've seen denials of the blatantly obvious from Sturgeon, and that's what today's been all about, really. Did you politicise the pandemic? Certainly not, as she hides all the evidence of her doing exactly that. It's just she's been caught out, and she knows she's been caught out, and that's probably why she was so emotional today, or pretended to be so emotional.
Well, I don't know. I think it's either conscious or it's so subconscious that it's ingrained, and so which is basically the same thing. Now, we were going to talk a bit more about zero COVID and all that nonsense, but rather than getting into more detail there, I think we will move forward rather than keep you here all night. We'll just do a brief thing about. We're going to yours, David.
Oh yeah.
The reactions, right? Reactions in the press. Now, I'll just, before we do that, say there was some talk about the care home deaths, not as much as I think people were expecting. I think we were expecting people to go into that in more forensic detail and say what part of the decisions were you involved in. Did you feel that, Mark, that maybe that was missing a little bit?
Yeah, I think they went into it more with Freeman than they did with Sturgeon. Yeah. So I think that probably one of the reasons why he didn't. But I was quite surprised he didn't mention it as more than he did. But maybe that was time restriction.
Yeah, well, some people have said that it's perhaps because there's a criminal investigation going on that as well. Yeah, I mean, she said at the end that she regrets the loss of life in care homes again, in a kind of teary episode. Neil Findlay, who we've seen was very much against the decanting of COVID patients from hospitals into care homes, basically said that, and she basically attacked him all the way through, and now she's like she regrets it, but she just continuously attacked those people as well. We'll be back. And of course, it's a terrible situation. People did die unnecessarily, and we need to get to the bottom.
Families are looking for answers.
Yeah, families are looking for answers, and it's really bad. And of course, people were affected. We had to go to funerals. Nobody, there's funeral restrictions and so on like that. But I mean, people who actually had deaths in the family and so on really need to get proper answers. Okay, we're back in a second with David's going to talk about reactions across the internet with today, after and during the testimony.
Yeah.
Oh, covering quite a lot of ground. Glad it seems to be going quite well so far. So, tell us what was going on.
What were people saying?
Yeah.
you there, David?
I'm here. I'm right here. Okay.
Okay.
Good, guys. So, just wanted to share very briefly some headline reactions to the performance today of Nicola and of Deputy Honest John Swinney yesterday in the COVID inquiry. So, firstly, Stu Campbell wings over Scotland, as we know him better, who is certainly no fan of Nicola Sturgeon, was rather damning today, and he even retweeted and praised a tweet from our old All for Unity colleague, Mairi, Linda Holt.
Linda Holt, I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, so
yes.
as it says here, Linda had raised three very, very important points about what today's performance showed from Sturgeon, and it even got wings as approval, so fancy that. Alex Salmond appeared on LBC this morning to rubbish the claims made by Honest John yesterday that WhatsApp messages were routinely deleted by the SNP government since 2007. Absolute rubbish, said Alex Salmond. Missing COVID messages have shone an unforgiving light on the Scottish government. Whatever is in those messages must be extraordinarily damaging. Oh my!
Well, it must be. That's the point, isn't it? Because
exactly.
we wouldn't have deleted them if they hadn't good reason.
Indeed, and of course, Salmond has a skin in the game there because the suspicion is that a lot of the deleted messages refer to Salmond inquiry.
That doesn't sound good either.
Indeed. Journalists, Madeline Grant, who's an excellent young Telegraph columnist.
Oh yes, I saw that actually.
Exactly. She's quite often on Politics Live. Very, very good speaker. Very, very pro-UK. Very anti-nationalist. And she channeled Julie Covington doing Eva Peron when she said, "Don't cry for me, sainted Nicola. The truth is, the former referendum didn't delete WhatsApp messages. They just weren't retained." That was her. Brilliant. So well done, Matt.
That's that one there.
Right. And then we had Alex Cole-Hamilton asked, how is it that Nicola Sturgeon claimed it was standard practice to delete WhatsApp messages during COVID when she was able to read 3-year-old WhatsApp messages between herself and Alex Salmond during his inquiry?
It's a puzzle. It really is.
It's funny how things like that work, isn't it?
When is a deletion policy not a deletion policy? When it damages Nicola Sturgeon?
Well, they weren't deleted, David. They just weren't retained.
They weren't retained. I beg your pardon. So Douglas Ross said, it's shocking that the SNP were debating the impact of public health decisions on their independence campaign during the pandemic, and he's absolutely right. Yeah, so, of course, we can rely on, as always, BBC Scotland and SNP News, STV News, to cast Ms Sturgeon in far more of a sympathetic light. There's obviously no surprise there. There's been very, very little praise elsewhere for Sturgeon after what was really a poor, faltering performance. So I'll leave the final word to the great Effie Deans once again. Sturgeon's whole life has been a lie, including the tears. And so say all of us.
Oh, yes. Well, someone said that, it's a famous quote, if you can fake sincerity, then you've got it made.
True, yeah.
And I think that's certainly part of the case. Now, one thing I did notice on Twitter was nationalists who said to you, would you rather have had Boris? I was like, well, actually, we got Boris anyway, because Sturgeon's decisions in general were just Boris's decisions 2 weeks later.
That's exactly
pretty much, right? And plus, Boris was able to get introduce the vaccine months before any other country and get big stockpiles of it, so everyone got it. And that was particularly good for people of our age, perhaps, because and obviously even better for older people. But there was a worry among people our age, certainly, that we could get this at any point as well at that time.
It's true.
And I already mentioned a point about the this 4 nations pish, as some people say. It's absolute nonsense. We need to get away from this. And perhaps one thing that Labour may do, certainly one thing that we'll be pushing them to do, is to go back with this entire UK and pooling and sharing and all those type of ideas. Thank you for that section, David. Now we're going to have a little section. Mairi is going to tell us an amazing and astounding fact, her prediction of when, you just have to wait for this, prediction of when Scotland and England will separate. We'll be back in just a second. Right, come on, Mairi, you hit us with it.
Okay, well, I was going to talk about the collapse of the criminal justice system in Scotland, but I think I'll leave that for next week. Because this week there's very exciting news, and I actually have the exact date when Scotland finally becomes independent from England. The date has been revealed. Yes, it's in 250 million years' time. So save the date. Do you have that headline, Mark?
Yes, there we go.
This is when scientists predict that all the continents will converge to form Earth's next supercontinent. which will be called Pangea Ultima and also known as Pangea Proxima. And we know this thanks to an American geologist and paleogeographer. His name is Christopher R. Scotties. Can you believe that, Scotties?
Okay.
He's used a computer algorithm, so it must be true, to simulate the mechanisms that moves the Earth's plates.
But how do you know it's
So-
250 million years exactly? Is it-
Exactly.
could it be 250 million years in 1 year?
No, it's 250
Right,
million
okay.
years, Mark. We now have an exact
Right,
date.
okay. Well,
And not before, I might add.
and I think that's about how long it's going to take them to get to that point anyway.
Well, the good news is for nationalists. For nationalists, is they can now set their calendars for the 19th of October, 250 years.
Well, I think we should send out save the dates.
Yes,
exactly,
that's it. Well, we won't, sadly. I mean, perhaps we won't be here to see
Well, you
that
never
moment. I mean, will the Earth even? What would the Earth be like in those
Let's,
times?
guys, we've been on for over an hour. We've been on for an hour and 5 minutes, I think.
Right. Oh, well, that's good. That was good, Mary. It was a
Let's
good
not
bit.
talk too much about what things are going to look like in 250 million
Yeah,
years.
All right.
How about next week, maybe?
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Right. A huge thank you for being with us on the show tonight. What things you can do to help the show? You can like this show. Like it right now. Hit that like button. That is the number one thing. We had 300 likes in the last show, and what that drives up is the subscriptions. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. You will get alerts, and you will be part of an exclusive club of subscribers at the moment. You can also buy a T-shirt and mug, such as the Majority or Abolish Holyrood, from our store. We also have some nice Zoomer T-shirts too. Please do tell your friends about the show. That is word of mouth, I think, is what's driving a lot of our subscriber growth right now. And if you can do all of the above, please do so, because it makes us feel worthwhile. Coming up, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. The highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the Week.
Yay.
Right, in a change of order, we're going
that's
to
right.
start with Mary this time.
Okay, great.
So good that you have to start first.
Well, I'm actually starting with the same person that I won it with last week, so I'm
I
hoping
see.
this is going to be another winner. My Zoomer of the Week is a First Minister, Humza Yousaf, who managed to get through a 2-minute speech marking the Holocaust Memorial Day without even mentioning Hitler's extermination of the Jews, or in fact, any Jews at all.
Oh, a bit strange, that one, isn't it?
I see.
So we talked, as we talked about earlier, for refusing to, actually we didn't talk about that earlier, but the other thing he did is he refused to cease the Scottish funding for the UN Refugee Agency,
Yes.
UNRWA.
UNRWA.
Yeah,
Yes.
Israel revealed that some of its staff were personally involved in the 7th of October terrorist attacks. Now, lots of countries have said that they've ceased funding, including America, Australia, France, Italy, Germany, tons of countries. But Humza says not Scotland. But going back to his speech, he did say it has never been more important to remember the victims of the Holocaust, but we're just not going to mention them. And he also referred to the millions of lives cut short with the utmost cruelty and brutality, but we're not going to say who it was. He didn't mention who the victims were or what happened to them. So BBC presenter Sir Simon Scammer, is it? Yeah, he said that the First Minister was pathetically terrified of using the J word.
Oh,
He said, not enough that millions of our people perished. Now we've been subjected to a second disappearance, exactly what the Reich had in mind.
Very good
Now,
point.
so 6 million Jews were murdered simply because they were Jews. But if you listen to Humza Yousaf's statement this week, you wouldn't even know it.
no, it's yes. It's
It's a mark of the man, isn't it, really? He won't say anything that might cast him in a bad light with his core bedrock vote, if you like, or his own people. It's appalling.
It's appalling, and it's. I mean, one thing you can say for Sturgeon, at least she didn't dabble in this kind of nonsense.
No, true.
I mean, she just didn't like the English. Okay, but perhaps the Jews were. I think she might have been okay with the Jews, perhaps maybe occasionally put a message out.
Well,
about
we did see
supporting
all those
Palestine
lovely,
and so on.
all the
but-
lovely photos of when she went to the concentration camp and
We
her
did.
Oh,
posing
that's right,
outside all the
that's right.
buildings
Well,
and
Practically
everything.
taking selfies in front of all
That's
the.
true. That is
Oh.
actually very true. It's not the first time they have used Jews as a way to promote their selves. It's not really right. But anyway, okay, right. Good one there, as Catherine says here. Despicable. All right, coming up, it's the second Zimmer of the week. This time it's going to be from David.
Okay. So, for Zimmer this week is once again the SNP Government's Secretary for Transport, Net Zero and Just Transition, Mairi MacAllan. She is no stranger to this nomination, and she is additionally the apparent, it would seem, to the role of SNP leader once Humza inevitably is removed following his forthcoming general election defeat. If you haven't seen much of Mairi in action, imagine someone very young and a bit prettier who channels Nicola Sturgeon in speech and mannerisms, and you get the idea. But despite being very young for a cabinet, I think she's only 31 or something, she has rather an unpleasant way of expressing herself, as we saw when she was very rude and rather ignorant to Deputy Presiding Officer Annabel Ewing, who's also an SNP MSP, in Holyrood just a few weeks ago when she told her to resume or take her seat. She wouldn't do it. Very, a real piece of attitude, this young lady. Anyway. Okay.
Let's do. Will we see the video? Is that what was in?
That's not the video. No, that's the video is something else. But yesterday, when questioned on the status of upgrades to Ardrossan Harbour, which is right there, guys, and these upgrades are needed to accommodate the SNP's ridiculously delayed new ferries, this was Mairi MacAllan's reply. This is
okay, right. Now we got it.
The ferries, which have already been asked about. Now, Ardrossan. The port at Ardrossan, I think the fact is this has been delayed because there's been no agreement with the owners of the port.
I've lost a sound.
Well, I can hear it. I can hear it fine.
For what and what should be done. That's the fact, isn't it?
I think the number of actors involved and the complexity is one of the factors that Alison and I have both laid out, yes.
So is it the case then that we may end up in a situation where Ardrossan is not used permanently?
Absolutely no decision has been taken on that, and it would be wrong of me to preempt the work of the task force and the business case review.
No decision, therefore it's a possibility.
Where there's no decision, that's all I can say.
Right, guys. The significance there, just for those of you maybe are not too close to this story, the SNP's Transport Secretary has confirmed there is no Scottish Government commitment whatsoever to retain Ardrossan Harbour as a departure point for the Droidic ferry to Arran, which is there. Now, already freight services to Arran are going from Troon because Ardrossan Harbour has an unsafe berth, what they call the Irish berth. Troon for many years has been identified as the replacement departure point while the upgrades are carried out to Ardrossan Harbour so that the new ferries can go in there. And now she's saying, oh no, there's no decisions being made about where it's going from. This is appalling. It's absolutely.
When are they going to decide?
God knows. Where is it going to go from then? So, but for it to be snuck out in this way is quite a bit appalling, really. And it seems to me it's part of Mairi's blueprint for just transitions they keep talking about to a future in which presumably all ferry travel is banned because you've got to stay in your little 15-minute cities. And just in case another pandemic strikes, and then Mairi can appear on the TV every day being all sanctimonious and then crying when she's asked if she's done a good job. So it's just dreadful. An appalling way of doing business, and really an unpleasant young woman who's growing up to be exactly like her hero, Nicola Sturgeon, and that's why she's won a nomination once.
It's just business as usual for the SNP,
so
isn't
young,
it?
And people have no experience whatsoever. Now, we'd invited Mark on actually as a special guest, but we didn't actually ask you to choose a Zoomer. But I think Mark.
No, I thought Mark could actually choose who the Zoomer is going to be.
Oh, that's a good idea. So
Mark can be the judge. So listen carefully.
I know it's pretty obvious what the next one's going to be, but we're back in a second with the Zoomer. Right. When it comes, it's no surprise that my nomination is for her saintliness herself, the deleter-in-chief, the first greeter, Nicola Sturgeon. Zoomery, actually here, though, I think is her thinking that anyone would believe the utter lies that she came out with today. And now that the truth is coming out, though, and despite the pretense to be working for the people of Scotland, this is what she actually did. She made decisions without cabinet approval and a small cabal of people. She excluded ministers from decisions. She made decisions using private devices. She lied about not deleting messages and then did delete the messages. And she politicised the pandemic by making it a contest between Scotland and England, not for health results, which actually might have been quite a good idea, but primarily to create division and to fulfil her instinct, I think was the word that KC used, for independence. In fact, Nicola Sturgeon wasn't working for the people of Scotland. She was working for one person in Scotland, herself. Yeah. She lied, manipulated, and hid her activities so that the outcome was always the best for her, and Scotland be damned. The Scottish people should be ashamed for ever letting her and her cabal of nationalist charlatans ever gain any power. This was inevitable. Nationalism is this is where it leads. To centralised decisions, secrecy, and just this kind of leader complex, leader worship that's been going on. And then when that's removed, you begin to see really what's behind the curtain. We dug in the form of a inquiry has managed to pull away that curtain and really shows that there's nothing behind there at all. So for all that and for being an insufferable windbag, I nominate Nicola Sturgeon. Right, so Mark, who could it be?
It's a difficult one. I must admit,
consider them all carefully.
Yeah, I really don't want to make Nicola cry again. I'm sure she'll be listening to this, but
you will suffer if you do.
But it's going to have to be Nicola. It really has
to be.
It has to be Nicola. So, Mark, it's yours.
Well done.
Yes, a win, another win. Great.
What do you mean another win? When was the last one?
I won like 3 in a row about a month ago.
Oh, I don't believe that.
Yeah, it's true. You can go back.
I'm going to have to watch all the shows again.
Yes,
just to see.
And of course, that's what you can do. You can watch all of our shows again on YouTube and catch up. So if you're doing that right now, great. Thank you for being with us. Also, in addition to the live viewers, of course, we have so many viewers watching the show later on as well. That is great. So we are so happy to have you on the show every week. Scotland's #1 politics chat. It's been quite a day, really, hasn't it? We are going to go and have a bit of a rest. Now, after all of that, there's only so much screeching a person can take, really, and let's hope that this is the end of the end of Sturgeon's career. Anyway, there is no real thought for the week other than thank you for being with us for 100 shows so far, and we hope that to see you in 100 more in the future. If not more, we will see how it goes. Anyway, hopefully by that time, nationalism will be gone and we can maybe move on to other topics, or perhaps that will take 250 million years. So it's good night from me.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for your comments.
Oh, yeah, thanks, everybody. Fantastic. Cheers, guys.
Right, and thank you, Mark, for coming on at short notice as well. All right, we'll see you again. I'll see you again very soon. All right, take care.